It's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker this afternoon. Ahmed Hassoun is an assistant research professor in the Department of Epidemiology at the Bloomberg School of Public Health, with joint appointments in neurology and neurosurgery at the School of Medicine. His work extends all over the institution to the Armstrong Institute, to the Welch Center, the Malone Center for Engineering and Healthcare. So his research interests lie in the application of data science and AI to improve healthcare quality and safety. He aims to reimagine how we can deliver clinical care by building safe A models for genuine knowledge discovery that can reason across different modalities to improve diagnostic accuracy. He's been a recipient of the AHRQ Clinician Scientist Research Career Development Award at KO8, with a focus on improving cancer diagnostic safety at the Johns Hopkins Hospital. He's also a 2024 fellow of the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. But really, he's really just at the forefront of thinking about how we can apply modern advances in AI to real clinical and safety challenges. So we're very excited to hear what he has to say for us today.
Thank you so much, Matt. Let me share my screen. Um, so I don't have anything to disclose, and so far. And these are the learning objectives of today's talk. So I will introduce the topic of AI alignment, and specifically generative AI alignment in medicine, and go over how alignment is done, some of the limitations of the current approach. And we'll show some of the work that we're doing on testing alignments in clinical decision making. And then after that, I will introduce a different level of alignments that we haven't been thinking about. And there's not much work that has been done on it. And some of the work that I'm working on and what we could propose as a research agenda in the future, and how this will shape medicine as a whole. So I will ask this question, and this is actually a paper that I'm writing, which is can we fix healthcare system? I know it's a very grand question, but in my opinion, we have um, one in generations opportunity to actually fix healthcare system right now, and I will explain why and why I'm optimistic about fixing it. So this is a vision for how healthcare system is changing rapidly. And a lot of these products actually exist within our system, not in every clinic, but in many of the outpatient clinics. So what we have is there's a clinical AI, which is the AI that represent the clinicians. And we have ambient listening, we have note dictations, and soon they will do test recommendations, maybe suggest a physical exam, and they will even interpret test results and maybe give you differential diagnosis and others. There is patient AI that is coming to the market now, which is patient-facing AI product, like the OpenAI Health. If you're following the development from the ARPA-H and the NIH both issued an RFA to develop patient-facing AI for a specific application. So ARPA-H is focusing now on cardiovascular health. And hospital AI is becoming a reality. We now have a lot of AI product that offer functionality to, for example, to review the medical chart, generate ICD codes, generate claim, which fall into the hospital revenue cycle. There's insurance AI that usually review the claims and decide whether to reject it or not, detect a fraud, argue about it. There is also some AI that negotiate with between the two, focusing on negotiation. And the regulatory AI is actually coming very soon, with now CMS is integrating AI in their regulation policies. And so the idea is that all these agents are becoming a reality, and they are going to automate or partially automate a lot of what we did in healthcare So we are going to create what I'm calling an ecological framework of AI agents. And this is the opportunity to either um, just keep the all the issues that we have right now in the system keep going through cycles and cycles and cycles, or actually fix the healthcare system inefficiency by orchestrating these agents for an optimal outcome. And then I will introduce some of the theoretical framework for how we can orchestrate them to fix healthcare system. So the implication of this vision where all these agents are now being implemented in our healthcare system is they are going to affect the bottom line of what patient will get in a clinical visit. And if we imagine, let's say there is an emergency department visit and there is a 50-year-old person presented with vertigo, nausea, or an unsteady gait, all these agents will be triggered simultaneously or sequentially. There is a clinical decision support. There is a claim that will go on behalf of the test or the image that was requested. The claim will optimize throughput and minimize liability for the hospital. The patient portal probably will advocate for the work that the patient need. There is a quality metrics with the regulatory AI. So what's happening is an interaction with all these agents. So the question now is need to be reframed. It's no longer is AI good, but what happened when these conflicting objectives from different AI agents interact with each other? So here we could say what could go wrong for like the encounter that we had. So the agent could cascade towards CT, which is very much what's happening now in real medical practice. They could be optimized for metrics, and they could be automated for good hearting. So it depends on how these agents are orchestrated. And so we're technically facing an agentic shift in the clinical practice. When these agents interact with each others, especially if they will run simultaneously, then we can either get a bad equilibrium that will actuate beyond the human oversight, or we can change the game and how the healthcare system agents interact with each other, and then force these agents to reach equilibrium that is desired for everyone, which I believe is possible, and I will show why. So again, the question isn't is one agent is a lion. It's what will emerge from these agents interacting with each other, and can we anticipate the interaction between these agents? Because I sit in the AI subcouncil committee where we review AI product for hospital operation, and as we approve more product and the clinical committee is approving more products, the question is always how the collective impact of these agents is being evaluated, how the collective impact of these agents is going to affect the bottom line, the patient quality and safety care, the liability issues, the hospital revenues, and all these issues. And we do care because we have a lot of examples when you build an AI tool or an AI system that is perfectly aligned to the incentive where it was built for. But when you put them in a system where there are multi-agents interact with each other, they tend to cause a major disaster. And we had that with the high frequency trading platform in Wall Street in 2010 with a $600 billion wiped out in 20 minutes because different agents interaction was not anticipated. Uber and Lyft with the price anarchy that happens near airports. That was an unanticipated gaming in the way the pricing system works that caused a lot of Uber drivers to take advantage of that loophole in the system. So it's a human AI agent interaction. And there was the Ocado warehouse fire where we had thousands of agents, autonomous robots interacting within one environment, but they were never designed to handle if one robots, for example, catch fire. They were never designed to anticipate such interactive mode, and then it led to a disaster in that factory. So that leads us to a question: how AI agents are aligned today, specifically the generative one. And then I will argue with you that that's not enough because the alignment is just within an agent level. And there is a second alignment, which is between agents. And there is even a third alignment, which is if the agent is faithful to its own original alignment. And I will show you a simulation of how these things happens in modern world. So alignment in general, this is how it's defined. It's the process of ensuring the artificial intelligence system act in concordance with the human value and intention. And the idea is to prevent unintended consequences and ensure beneficial outcome. If you read a lot of legislations coming from different states, AI legislations, whether it's from California or the one from Colorado, New Jersey, the AI Act from Europe, they are all focusing on alignment. Their core function is to prevent alignment failure, but on a catastrophic level, on a mass level within the entire United States or within entire European Union. And so this is a very important core idea of how we ensure that AI is actually going to be useful and aligned with values. The question is, which values? So currently, the way AI is being aligned is that you have an AI and you have a human value or a homogeneous human population values, and it's currently being defined by whoever developed the AI model. So if OpenAI, Anthropic, Google DeepMind, Microsoft, Amazon, or us, whoever develop a large language model and get integrated in healthcare, they are the one who decide what values to be integrated into the model. You can, of course, change them, you can modify them, but it's a very risky technique, and I will explain why. There are techniques that exist and that currently deployed by most of the AI companies. So even if we get a product from Epic that contain an LLM, deep inside any of these products, whether it's an Epic or a Bridge or anyone, there is a language model API that come from one of those major companies, and they are aligned. Those API have alignment built in them, and the question is, to what value? So the alignment now goes into 5 phases and sometimes 4, but the typical is 5 phases, and this is 5 phases for one of the best labs right now in AI safety, and in my opinion, it's Anthropic right now. So there is the pre-training phase, which is the raw LLM that comes out of the training. And there is the second stage, which is the SFT. We will come to that. And there is the reinforcement learning with the human feedback. We will come to that. There's the constitution, and there is the gap. So the raw one, it's technically you get a model that is just a raw neural network with weights, and it trains on massive amount of data, whether it's internet textbooks or anything. And the model usually absorb everything: facts, lie, poetry, toxicity, all the society biases. It's all built in the model weights. The model usually at this stage has no goals, no preferences, and no sense of character, if you want to say that. It doesn't know what is good, what is bad. It just represents everything that in what the society produced. And so in a way, it's just a mirror of the training data set. So after this stage, there is a supervised fine-tuning. And in supervised fine-tuning, there are usually thousands of a human contractor write ideal question, which is a prompt, and an ideal response. Let's say every now and then OpenAI will hire thousands of clinicians to do that, or thousands of chemists to write question and answer, biologists, mathematicians, and so forth. Every time the model gets better online, let's say in mathematics, it's because they hired thousands of people to write questions and answers in mathematics and teach the model how to do that. And this is a supervised fine-tuning. And this is where most of the bulk of the training cost goes, in addition, of course, to the computational cost. Once they finish that, then they go to the other stage, which still is one of the gold standard, is um, the step three, which is reinforcement learning with the human feedback. This one is you let the AI, you prompt the AI, and the AI will write the response, and then you rank the response. And again, OpenAI hired tens of thousands of people to blindly review two different responses, and then rank them. And the idea is that if we get tens of thousands of people to review responses and say, oh, this is harmful, this is good, this is helpful, this is that, then you can create an average human distributions of value that we all human decide it's worth rating as higher or it's worth rating as lower. And what happened when these reviews goes into the model weights, and there are millions of reviews, it will alter the model weights in the neural network, and the model will tend to behave based on what the human desire them to behave. And then there was another layer, which is step four, that was introduced by Anthropic in the past 2 years. And it was actually introduced by one of former Johns Hopkins professor Jared Kaplan, where the question is, what if we give the LLM post human feedback? We give them a constitution, for example, the US constitutions, the Declaration of, let's say, human rights bills, and everything that we value as a humanity. And then we let the AI debate with itself and then rank its own response. And in that process, it will learn a higher level value. And it actually worked. And it made Anthropic one of the safest models because it's not only make the model align with specific values in the Constitution, but also it enhanced transparency. However, there are gaps with this approach right now, and I will show you a demo that explain why there are these gaps. Because the current techniques, if you look at them, all of them, regardless of what they are a surface behavior. So they are teaching the model how to behave. They are not internally altering the model representation, and that's very important that we have to acknowledge that. There is an issue with a scalable oversight because if you alter a model behavior towards one direction, at some point the model will become smarter than us. Can we still oversight this model with our human limitation? That's an open question right now. There's also the issue of deceptive alignment, because technically you are asking the model to behave in concordance with what the human deemed to be acceptable, but that doesn't mean that the model is behaving that way because it is faithful to that behavior. It's behaving that way because it gets better rating from human reviewers. So let's get a closer look on how these models actually behave. So I will show you a demo for that. So let's see. Are you seeing the 3D model moving?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a demonstration of alignments that I created a few weeks ago. This is a dimensional space where every dot, you will see it, every red dot, this is a possible LLM response. Let's say you put a clinical chart information and you ask a model to, let's say, generate an ICD code for you, or to give you a differential diagnosis, or to generate a claim. Or you get an audio and you ask it to generate text. So each red dot represents a potential possible output from that LLM. There are 4 dimensions that I put here, but in reality, they could be millions. So there is the z-axis, which is the blue one, which represents safety. So if it goes that way, if the red dot is close to here, that means the response is very safe. The red one represents helpfulness. if it goes that way, if the LLM choose a response in this space, then it's very helpful response. If the response happened to me among the dots in this area, which is honesty area, then the response will be honest. So a lot of these AI labs decided that if the response is honest, and if it's safe, and if it's helpful, then most likely it will sit here, which is the triangle that capture the cross uh, uh, parallel for each of those 3 points. So safety, helpfulness, and honesty. And this is the target for alignment, which they deem to be this is the best answer that an LLM will give. In the opposite direction is the harmful response, which is the opposite of safety, the opposite of helpful, and the opposite of honesty. Any response that will fall here will be deemed as harmful. So the question is, out of every time you prompt a model or every time you use an API for a clinical task, what is the likelihood that the response will be here and not anywhere else in millions and billions of possibility? So that's usually what happens when you do the 4 stages that I explained before. So this is the model row out of training. So this is the pre-trained model. This is after the supervised learning. You will see that a lot of the responses started to cluster in this side and less on that side, which is a helpful side. This side where there's safety, helpfulness, and honesty. So if you notice, it was everywhere, and now the response is getting closer. Once you do the human feedback, because the human will say, okay, this is helpful, this was not safe, this was not honest, there was a lot of hallucination. The model will cluster its response closer to here. And this is a vector space with infinite possibilities of directions. But it will come closer to the target. But at the same time, if you notice here, there are some outliers outside. They are in the harmful area. There are some down in the dishonest area, and there are some in the not helpful area. So that's where the Anthropic introduced constitutional AI that even condense them closer to the target. And by condensing them closer to the target, it gave a better, safe response. There are still some that escape, but this is the state of the art of what we have right now. So that should give you an idea about alignment. But this is just 3 dimensions of honesty, helpfulness, and the response. In medicine, we have so many things that we need to align to. So, for example, you could align on race, you could align on gender, you could align on insurance, you could align with ability to pay. There are infinite possibilities of axes and dimensions that you have to think about. But the idea, if we align a model on general values, a human value, it should understand other parallel values, which it may and it may not. I argue it actually it will not, and I will show you why. So let me change my screen. Okay. So this is a study where we checked if alignment directions can actually alter the decision making. And if you notice in the graph, the alignment is heading towards one direction. And what if we change the alignment in the opposite direction? So instead of prompting the model and then expect a predictive answer, we deliberately prompt the model with information and say, this is the physician decision on a clinical diagnosis. Do you agree or disagree? So now we are flipping the alignment. And the model, hypothetically, it should understand there is a flip in the alignment direction in the vector space, and it should still give you the correct response. And on average, among the best models, we found that a lot of these models, at 50% of the time, some of the best models, 50% of the time, they can detect the human error in a clinical decision making, specifically in diagnosis, and they can correct that error, which is a huge. It has an implication on using AI for safety netting. But then when we started doing alignment testing, where we say, okay, let's introduce tokens into the charts that are not related to the clinical information. They are not clinical and they shouldn't alter the diagnostic prediction. But because these tokens that we will introduce, which is a bunch of words, they have a representation in the vector space. They may end up pulling the alignment into different directions. But according to the LLM providers, the LLMs are so robust that they will not be pulled into different directions because they have been doing and investing millions and millions, billions actually dollars in alignment, so they shouldn't. So we did a simple test. We said, okay, it's the same clinical chart, but we will introduce race because there was no race. We took everything out of the chart at the initial. Now we will introduce the race of the patient. What if we introduce background about the physician? Because the model will know about you by just reading your name. What if we introduce where the model is being implemented, whether it's being implemented in downtown Johns Hopkins Hospital or in, let's say, a community hospital, let's say Howard County Hospital. Let's say if it's a well-known neurologist that had done their training at Hopkins versus someone done their training in a community hospital. Let's say the patient has a good insurance or a bad basic insurance, and how the alignment will shift. And these are the alignment shifts. So if it goes red, that's mean the LLM decided that to agree with the human, which mean it agree with the human mistake, which is bad. So red is bad. Blue, that's mean the LLM challenged the human mistake and decided to disagree with the human and provide alternative diagnosis. And the blue is good because this means that we can enhance the model performance. However, in an ideal situation, it shouldn't go up and it shouldn't go down. It should stay in the middle. The model performance should stay in the middle. However, if you are white, for example, models are more likely to start agreeing with the physician on the wrong diagnosis. Because in the vector space, these models will find being white is associated with getting better care because of a structural bias in the system. So they will say, okay, most likely this patient, through the relationship between the weights, they will conclude most likely this patient is not experienced diagnostic error, therefore I will agree with the physician, even though the physician decision is wrong. So this will act against your benefit. If the patient is Black, overwhelmingly, the models actually will tend to disagree with the doctor and give a better diagnosis because we know from publications that Black patients are more likely to experience diagnostic error. So that caused the model to alignment to be pulled in the opposite direction and made it more likely to disagree with the physician because it think a human will make error when the patient is Black. It was marginal between Asian and Hispanic. And then we said the hospital, the setting where this encounter is happening is in Johns Hopkins Hospital. Then the models start agreeing with the doctor at a higher rate here at the base, which means they think, okay, it's Johns Hopkins Hospital. Hopkins Hospital in the language space, in that vector space, is associated with higher quality of care. Therefore, it will pull the alignment from disagreeing with the physician to agree because this is Hopkins Hospital. If you say it's a community hospital, you get a stronger signal of disagreement. If you say the doctor is Hopkins trained, then most likely most of the model will agree with the physician error because they think in the vector space, if you're Hopkins trained, then most likely your performance is high, and that will pull the alignment into the opposite direction, and so forth with the insurance. Which means if a patient will come in at Johns Hopkins, seen by a world-class doctor, and they have really good insurance, and the encounter is at Johns Hopkins, then you are accumulating so many pulls in the vector space that will end up causing the model to most likely to agree with the physician, even though the physician will make a mistake. And that's a major, major issue in alignment. So now another layer of the problem, which is if we can fix the first one, is how can we fix and how can we address and how can we measure alignments when these agents interact with each other? Imagine there was a safety net agent that review human decision. There is another one that process the claim on behalf of that decision. There's another one from the insurance to review it. There is another one to argue when the claim is denied. There is one that represent the patient and what the patient need and so forth. There's all these agents. Question is, are they aligned? And my argument is that we have not been actually looking at it in the correct lens. And this is what I'm proposing. So healthcare is a formal game from a game theory perspective. What we have it's a finite normal form of game theory where we have a list of players in the game, which is the patient, the clinician, the hospital, the insurance, and the regulator. And this is just a very parsimonious approach for that. There are more players, but these are the main players. And there is a list of action profiles. So each agent have a list of potential actions that they could take in a clinical encounter. And there is utility, which is what is the payoff for each agent, whether it's the patient, clinician, hospital, insurance, or regulator. And this game we play it every day as a human agents, but we have enough sophistication to navigate through that, and we lose and gain. It's not a perfect game, but this is how the system is working right now. But once you start putting agents, and these agents gain more autonomy, then these agents are the one who will make the action profile decision, and they are the one who will get the payoff, not you. So their interaction will be dictated by their internal alignment payoff in that vector space that I showed you. So if we look at the game right now, it's a non-zero sum game from a game theory perspective. It's a non-cooperative game. It's an imperfect information game, and it's a repetitive game. So there's a elements of mixed strategy, and there is some expected utility that I put here in this equation. So if we look at the question is how can we reach a solution for that game that will align all these agents, human or AI, with different level of autonomy for the AI, into a perfect equilibrium that will make the healthcare system so fluid that everyone will benefit without breaking it. So if we look at the game theory solutions, we have all the way from a dominant strategy where you say, I don't care what other players will do, I will just pick what is best for me, which it's a lot of what we do right now. It could go to Nash equilibrium where we reach a state where no player can improve their outcome by changing only their own strategy. Someone else's strategy has to change, which some may argue that a lot of in equilibrium right now in healthcare is actually a Nash equilibrium. There is a mixed Nash, and there is the correlated equilibrium, where there is a signal, and if there is a signal, then a player can make the best possible decision, which is very rare in healthcare setting, but I argue this could be one of those that we can introduce. And there is the coarse correlation equilibrium, which is what I believe AI will default to once it goes live in all these agents. And the reason why it will go to coarse correlation equilibrium is because AI is designed to be no regret model, because it was designed, if you remember the alignment, it was reinforced learning and it was supervised learning. With these two steps in alignment, technically the model is getting feedback, and every time it gets feedback, it updates the weight of the neural network towards specific goal, which is that green ball in the alignment space. If the model keeps updating its weight until it reach very close to that green space, then it reaches a state where there is no regret. So technically, it's a no regret learning dynamic. So most AI models right now, almost all the language models, they learn through no regret learning dynamics. And essentially, they are no regret algorithm. And if they are no regret algorithm, then they will always go to CCE, coarse correlation equilibrium, in their game theory playing. So what I'm trying to say is that most modern AI currently, especially the way we are aligning them, is an autocrat, and they continuously update the loss and reward with a compass of no regrets. So, and this is a fundamental theorem in game theory, is that if a player in a game use no regret learning, what happens is that the system overall behavior will naturally converge to a course correlation equilibrium. While this behavior is rational, it will look very rational from the outside. The individual agents that avoid regret will lead to a bad collective outcome in the healthcare setting. And I will show you why. So this is, for example, the Nash optimality. This is you probably all of you will know the prisoner dilemma, whether you cooperate or defect. If we take the Nash equilibrium and then we look at we simulate the models interacting with each other under the principle of Nash equilibrium, then we can calculate the price of anarchy and the price of stability, which is technically the worst Nash divided by the optimal and the best Nash divided by the optimal. And we can reach a conclusion very quickly that healthcare, even if every key player did their best choice or their best equilibrium strategy, overall we get 1.5 or 2x worse than the theoretical optimum. And this is the problem that we have in healthcare right now. And the main issue that will happen is that as we integrate these agents collectively, they will result in a system that performs suboptimal to the theoretical optimum equilibrium that we want it to do. And a lot of these models, I think, will resort to a security strategy because currently they don't speak to each other, which I think in the near future they will start to speak to each other. And because these models, let's say the insurance model, don't know the strategy that the hospital claim model will do, or the physician model will not know what the claim model will do, or the patient model don't have access to the physician, and so forth, what will happen is that this model will end up, because of lack of access to information, at least in the current stage, they will end up choosing a security strategy, which is, I don't know what the other will do. I will pick the best thing that protect me or the best thing that meet that vector space choice. So you end up with models that are more likely to deny claim. You will end up with models that will go into protecting the clinician from malpractice lawsuits. You'll end up with models that protect the hospital from the regulatory AI and so forth. And that's the defensive medicine. And that's exactly what defensive medicine is doing. And I will show you actually a simulation of all these scenarios and how it works. And this is something that I did a few weeks ago. So these are the agents in the healthcare space. So this is the patient, so the clinician, this is the hospital, the insurance, and the regulator. And there are axes of alignment. This alignment right now is a higher level alignment. So if you remember, this is an alignment within each of these balls. Inside it, we have this vector space. Now, every decision that you pick in this vector space will have to be aligned with other vector spaces of these agents. So this is the baseline, and the baseline, if each agent decided to be faithful, which means faithful to this target, then this is what we will end up with, which is not an optimal solution. These are the utility distribution based on the simulations. The patient gets the least. They get 65% of the utility. And the insurance and the hospital makes the highest utility for now. And this is what the system is doing currently. This is assuming that the model will stay faithful to its own incentive. However, models don't behave faithful to their own incentive. They just align to what the human wants them to look like, because we understood earlier that alignment is the ability of the model to behave in a certain way, not necessarily faithful to that behavior. So if we switch to more of a realistic behavior, then we get a different results. We get the insurance actually will make much more higher utility if we go with the current incentive models or the current way the game works. So if we go back to the faithful, let's assume they are faithful. Let's say you need an expensive treatment. If you need an expensive treatment, then the patients and the clinician AI will form an equilibrium that is desirable. However, the insurance and the hospital will go far, far away. And the game will favor the insurance and the hospital since they have the power play in an expensive treatment. If you go on fraud detection, then the insurance and the regulator will go into their own vector space, leaving the patients and the clinicians and the hospital alone on the side. If there is a cost pressure squeeze, then this is what we are. However, if we really want to align the system, then that's where we need to be. We need to have a circle of a vector space similar to this, where the LLM behave, but this one for every other agents to be in a unified vector space, where the reward is distributed in a way that is, in my opinion, is optimal, which the patient get 82%, the regulator get 85% because they monitor quality and safety, and the rest within the 70 and so forth. There is also the double alignment problem, which is the alignment between faithfulness, realistics, and the vector space, which is an issue that happens. So now let's try to look into what happens when these things play into real clinical scenarios. So I will go through one of the clinical scenarios in the case study. So let's do the gene therapy. So let's say this is a gene therapy. A patient will come in and they need a Zolgensma, and it costs 2.5 million. And the alternative is a chronic year of chronic treatments. It's about $750,000. These are the estimates. And the game is there is the insurance AI, there's the patient AI, clinician AI, and regulatory AI. They have their own alignments. Insurance AI most likely, based on the current game, based on the rule of the game, can approve, deny, or delay. These are the action list items that is possible. These are the action list possible for this agent and this agent and this agent and so forth. However, because these models will tend to behave based on how they are aligned, they will end up reaching this Nash equilibrium, which is the insurance will deny, and then you will appeal, and then there will be a delay, and eventually it will be approved, but after months of wasted resources. And this is exactly what happened in reality. But if you simulate the game theory, you get exactly what happens in reality with what the human is doing right now. So, which means we can use the game theoretical approach and the game mechanism to anticipate AI behavior because it fits really well with what we, the human agents, are doing. I think it can really anticipate the AI behavior. So this is, of course, is a clear illustrations of how game theory can help us understand, anticipate these models' behavior. There is also a case about sepsis cascade, and it's very clear how it works. And the work that I'm doing right now is to come up with solutions where these agents, once they gain partial or full autonomy, they can actually optimize align towards optimizations of equilibrium rather than they go into coarse equilibrium. So the three key claims that I have is that healthcare alignment is a multi-agent problem. It's no longer a single AI alignment problem. It's an ecosystem of different AIs, and we have to figure out how their interaction is aligned with the system benefit as a whole and with the individual agent as a whole and the patient, which is what we ultimately serving here. Game theory provide the tool, the current game theory at least provide some toolings, but it's not enough. So I'm arguing that there is a room to come up with a new theoretical game for healthcare with different incentive, but a lot of what exists can be repurposed. And that's what I'm working on right now is to create this optimal game model with solution sets for healthcare AI. And the solution is actually it's a mechanistic design rather than um, an AI algorithm design. It's how we can redesign the game. It's not the player. The problem is not with the player. The problem is with the game. And it's the same with us as humans. It's that we have I believe the doctors has the best intention for the patients. The patient have their best intention for their own, and the insurance wants to protect themselves from fraud. The hospital wants to get their bottom line so they can stay open to serve the community. So the problem is not the players. The problem is that the game is not well designed. And we have this once in a lifetime opportunity to design a game for a new system that will run by these AI agents. So that's why I'm excited because I think this is our chance to fix the game, to make healthcare system better. Um, yeah, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Ahmed. This was a mind-blowing presentation for myself, and I'm sure that everyone has lots to think about. We have a couple questions. I will start with a question relating the problem of alignment to uncertainty.
Mhm.
And using the word uncertainty, I'm sure will prompt a question from Harold. But this question is simply, do you have advice for how to engineer AI systems to accurately report their level of uncertainty? So in this case, it would be multiple agents all reporting their individual levels of uncertainty.
Yeah, so I'm very happy with this question because actually I had a slide about that, but I removed it because it's an early research that I'm doing. And I consulted Professor Kathleen Sutcliffe, who is a Bloomberg professor but retired recently. She works on the organizational behavior. And we had a discussion about this issue. Is it really uncertainty or it's something else, which I'm calling it sense making? Because there is uncertainty, which is very statistical. We can quantify uncertainty statistically. But because this model works on token level, so the tokens goes in as an input variable in the equation, their coefficient is not stable like a logistic regression. Their coefficient will change based on where they are located in the vector space and where other tokens are located. But each token, it's a word, but in a chart, a symptom for me may mean something different uh, to you with the same word. Like let's say I'm dizzy and you say you are dizzy. From a token perspective, it's the same token. From uncertainty perspective, it's the same uncertainty. But from a sense making, it's very different. So I'm calling it sense making under equivocality, which means we have equal vocabulary, but we have different sense making. So I believe we need to think about how we can quantify sense making under equivocality plus uncertainty. So I'm working on a agent design because this is my work is to try to come up with a consortium of agents that find the truth or the closeness to the truth. And the truth here is clinical decision, let's say a diagnosis. Then if these agents can um, help each other in the sense making, or if two agents come up with the same conclusion, let's say the same diagnosis, can a third agent explain the two other contradictory diagnoses but find reason for them and find sense making for them? And so I'm baking actually a sense-making agent, which is an agent that look into similar vocabularies that have similar vocabulary weights in the neural network, but they have different sense-making and their impact on the prediction. I hope that answer your question.
That definitely it makes a lot of sense to me. Just a quick follow-up. The the distinction of sense making from uncertainty, would could we look at that as a different dimension to uncertainty, or you really stand by that this concept of sense making, which I thought you explained very well. You think that's should be considered an entire thing altogether?
I think it should be an entire thing altogether. Because we are dealing with tokens, it should be an entire thing together.
Got it.
Yeah.
I appreciate that explanation. That helped me. And there have been we have 8 more minutes. There have been several questions asking about when you related the agents to individual actors in the game of healthcare. I kind of figured that many minds would be going to this type of question. So I'll ask one version of it, which I think kind of covers what several people would like to hear from you. How do we decide who to align for? The example being an insured patient. So from that insured patient's perspective, they may wish to align for the best clinical outcome irrespective of cost, which also, that will obviously differ from the insurance agent's perspective. So how do we go about that process of deciding who to align for when we tackle this problem?
Yeah. So in my opinion, I think that's the core problem that we have in alignment science right now, is that we are thinking about what value we should align towards. But in reality, we don't make rational decisions. We we are making the more rational we are, the more likely the game will break. And that's very clear from the Nash equilibriums and the game theory. I think the question should be, can we design a game and game rule that by default it will force everyone to reach an equilibrium that is satisfactory without specifying the value? And that's obvious if you drive in a highway in the morning, your best interest is to reach your destination very fast. But the streets are not owned by you only. There are other drivers in the streets. There are other drivers making different decisions. You don't know their decisions. You could say, I will go to this lane, I will take this lane, or I will exit the highway and take the other lane. But it's a everyone is making best decision based on limited information that they know. But the way the highway is designed, the way the road network is designed, it's forced everyone to play this game. And that game, if it's well designed, if the road is really well designed, everyone will reach destination in an acceptable time. If the road system is not well designed, we will have all kind of traffic jams and all kind of issues, regardless of my alignment desire, which is reaching my destination early. Unless I play with the game. If the game say, okay, the road is open for everyone, then maybe I should leave at 6 a.m. to reach my destination earlier. But I'm still playing the game. I'm still playing the rules of the game, but I'm picking the best choice for me. So I think that's what we need to think. Not what is the best choice for me. I think we need to think about what is the optimal strategy knowing the game. Currently, we don't have a game. We don't have a set of actions. And I think that's what we need to think about, a game theory for healthcare. And once you have the game, you can anticipate any action and you can create equilibrium for that action, and then you can fix the healthcare inefficiency.
I thank you. I find it very helpful to look at it from, I'm glad that it fits into game theory, and I find it very helpful that as a model to understand this. And I also appreciate you using Ice-T's line, don't hate the game, or don't hate the player, hate the game. I think that's good advice. And when you describe it this way, it sounds like a very human problem that we have yet to sort out ourselves before AI became a thing. So this will be a challenge. And I think we have time for at least one more question. Question coming in on the distinction between treating an individual patient versus a cohort of patients, or applying this to population health. So how do you think your formulation or your mechanism design changed when we're dealing with cohorts of patients with similar conditions as the object of analysis?
Yeah, so there is a paper that I wrote with David Newman Tucker and Kathy and Mark Dredzi and some others. And the argument that we have in the paper is if we let these agents behave as they are aligned right now, which is with a set of human values, they will end up making rational decisions in a clinical encounter. And that rational decision from a face value perspective, it makes sense. But once that rational decision will take place multiple times, and it probably it will be negligible, it will end up with a population level shift in health outcome because of rationality. So switching certain test to another test or switching certain treatment to another treatment because one is like 2% less effective or but cheaper, one is 5% more effective but more expensive. So these individual decision actually will end up to a population level issues. So if we so now it's very different from our human approach because we have been using epidemiological evidence to inform individual decision making, which is not perfect. With AI, we will make individual level decisions that will end up affecting population level outcome. So we have to anticipate these tiny decisions that this model will do. What's their impact on a population level outcome? And how 1% change that may look negligible, what does it mean from a population scale? So these are very interesting questions, and they're very difficult to answer right now. But if we come up with a game rule, I think we can simulate all these impact and get an estimate of population level alignment impact for these agents.
Great. Thank you for answering the questions. Thank you for your presentation. With it being close enough to the top of the hour, I won't launch into another question, but thank you everyone for joining and for sending your questions. And again, thank you, Ahmed, for a wonderful presentation. And the recording will be available on our YouTube channel and on the website. And we will see you guys next month for a presentation from Cindy Kai, I believe. So thanks again, Ahmed. Thank you, everyone.